Louis Villegas is an urban design expert and director of RAMP. That's Residents Association for Mount Pleasant. I don't know, were you able to hear my last guest?
I was here for the whole thing.
Okay, so what's your reaction, and where would you disagree with him?
Well, first of all, we both serve on the Mount Pleasant Implementation Committee.
Yes, you mentioned that.
So we're good friends, and but we have a disagreement over building and form. Look, the architecture, as I see it, is bad, and the urbanism is non-existent.
Is what?
Non-existent.
Okay.
This is a building form that is just like a big fortress that is taking over the entire block, rising straight up for 4 or 5 stories. No public space until you get up to the 5th floor, where the public open space is really not public. It's for the people that live in the project. I have a drawing here that we did for the Rise, which shows 3 buildings and a pavilion that is built on the ground, and it's open to the streets all around it. Participates with the neighborhood, doesn't turn its back on it.
That's an interesting concept, talking about the public space being very public, not just for the residents of the complex. Is that common?
It's part of the magic that makes human-scale urbanism. It's common everywhere until about 1950, 1960 in North America, when the cars take over, and your experience in the Safeway parking lot is that you're in the middle of nowhere. Up until then, it was very common to have a place where you might drop in and have a coffee before you got on a tram, and without having to text or phone, you bump into somebody you knew because you're in the heart of your neighborhood.
So you live in the neighborhood?
Absolutely. Been paying taxes there for 25 years.
And what do you live in?
I live in a 3-story wood frame apartment.
Now, I'm confused about the controversy between 3 stories, 5 stories, 12 stories, 22 stories. I don't really understand the debate. I live in Cole Harbour during the week. There are lots of high-rises. There are also parks, playgrounds, sea walks, coffee shops. It's a very livable, almost village-like place to be. I don't even know how many stories my building is. I think it's 20. But I haven't looked for so long, I'm not actually sure. But the height of the building just doesn't seem to matter to me, and that's just me. I'm not, saying anybody else should feel the same way. But I do get puzzled at people getting hung up on the height of a building.
Well, the height of the building in your neighborhood was designed specifically. It was a boutique urban design. Mm-hmm. We had brownfields, we had CPR yards. By the way, it was fire in that CPR yard that blew in the winds and burnt out Gastown back in the beginning of our city in 1886. But you have everything designed at the same time. It was a brand new neighborhood. I am all for towers in the downtown. It was a brilliant move. We doubled down on infrastructure that we had built to build commercial towers downtown to be competitive in the global economy.
But what surprises me is how family-friendly it is. I see people every day walking their kids in strollers, walking their dogs, just sitting on the many benches that are in the area, people watching, people walking, skateboarding, riding bikes. It's not at all what I had conceived of living downtown.
You're a very recognizable face. How many people in your building have you come to know over the years?
Not very many. Except to say hello.
That's one of the things.
Because I have friends all over.
We rented in White Rock for 4 years, and I got to know the people on the other side of my back lane, not because we had anything in common other than we were taking out the garbage on Tuesdays and the recycling on Thursdays.
But don't misunderstand. I mean, I do say hello to the people across the hall. I speak to people in the elevator, people in the parkade, are very friendly. It's just that most people have moved in at a point when they've probably got family and friends all over the city, and they're not looking to make new friends, but they're not being unfriendly.
Okay. Well, the point that I'm making is that if you take that exact same model and you bring it to an existing neighborhood, you have a whole different set of issues. Because now the neighborhood fabric is already in place, and we can't design those open spaces that are in Cole Harbour that are, make living in a high-density point tower enjoyable. You have that whole waterfront that has been built out, the cafes. I don't see the kind of pedestrian density there that I would expect, but maybe it's coming in the next few decades.
Well, as it fills up, I mean, look at the Olympic Village. I mean,
exactly.
For a while it looked barren. Now it looks like
it's coming along.
Really neat neighborhood.
It's coming along. But when you're talking about an existing neighborhood and you're talking about the regeneration of existing neighborhoods, and this is what Pat Condon calls our streetcar neighborhoods, they were meant for walking, then these big buildings that can't come in with everything else around them become problematic. You're shadowing houses that are nearby. There is no single-family residential in Cole Harbour. You're shadowing parks. You're shadowing schools. You're creating conditions of high traffic loads that the traffic engineers really cannot control because those streets and lanes are already in place.
Talking with Louis Villegas, urban design expert, director for RAMP, the Residents Association in Mount Pleasant. Interesting discussion. I hope you'll join us. 604-280-9898. I'd especially like to hear from you if you live in Mount Pleasant, but it's not exclusive to you. Toll free, 1-877-399-9898. My phones are open to you. Talking with Louis Villegas, urban design expert and director of RAMP, Residents Association, Mount Pleasant. I read a quote from, it was actually guests here yesterday talking about density, saying, I'm not opposed to density, I just think it should be spread around. How do you react to that? Because it sounds like not in my backyard.
Like peanut butter. Well, I think you can play that one either way you want. You can say, hey, here's an NIMBY that doesn't want it in the backyard. The other way to play it is that here's a person that's maybe traveled a little bit and has experienced places with a different style of density, and they can go, you can see it in San Francisco, you can see it in Boston, you can see it in Montreal or Quebec City. But there are different ways to get to that magic number.
Well, the person might also like their backyard. Well, and they don't want to see it changed, and you can't blame people for that.
And the backyard is the right place to make the change. We like to have streets that are symmetrical with the same buildings on both sides of the street. You get to the lane, then on the other side of the backyard, we might be able to go from a house with a backyard to a row house with a backyard. The neighbors wouldn't tell the difference. The density would quadruple.
But we do need, density is something we have to have.
Bill, I think
we can't keep building out to Chilliwack and beyond.
Well, I think we can build to Chilliwack. Let's just put a train on it. But I think
people maybe can work and live in Chilliwack. But
yes,
people are not wanting a 2-hour commute. Anymore.
No, I think you're right. I think the commute is 20 minutes, and the ability
hopefully by some kind of transit.
Hopefully something green. And the technology is getting us so we can do it. But what really we should be focusing on is affordability. We want the people who are in their 20s now and even in their 40s and 50s to be able to go out and buy a family home if they choose to. You know, Gordon Price was here yesterday saying that there's a lot of renters in Vancouver, and I agree with that, and it's a significant component of Mount Pleasant's population. However, there's a lot of renters I know that would rather be paying down a mortgage, and they can't.
On a house, necessarily? Or a condo or townhouse?
The townhouses became legal for the first time since about 1927, 1 year ago. And if you buy a townhouse, you're actually buying 2 mortgage helpers. You can live on 1,800 square feet, and you can rent out your top level, 1,000 square feet to somebody, or rent out your bottom level, 1,000 square feet to somebody else. It's happened in London. It's happened all over the world. It's a huge opportunity to make housing affordable.
But that's interesting because, townhouses are everywhere.
Yes, but the townhouses are everywhere as bare land strata, which means you have a hidden tax, the strata fee, and you have a hidden Hitler, which is your strata corporation. If you're a fee simple row house, you can paint the color of your front door any color you want.
Kind of like Ireland.
Kind of like Ireland. Maybe not so much like Ireland, but maybe Spain.
So what do you want to see Mount Pleasant look like?
I want to see Mount Pleasant look like human-scale urbanism. I want to have the height of the buildings determined by the width of the fronting streets, so that the sun, on the shortest day of the year, on the 22nd of December, still comes down to sidewalk level. I want to see Mount Pleasant be an urbanism of short distances, where it's easier to walk than it is to drive, and where we have already transit stations coming in, so that those transit stations, even if they're industrial lands, should become the focus of a neighborhood for 10,000 to 20,000 people. And I want to see Mount Pleasant run the way that the school that my kids go to is run, where we celebrate difference and we welcome people with challenges.
So is the rise going to be stopped? Is it going to be dramatically changed?
I think the rise is illegal. I don't think it conforms with the city plan that was approved 2 years ago. And I think we're going to have to work ourselves through some kind of process to get to the end of that story. And I think that the people of the Rise are welcomed in our neighborhood for coming in to invest in our neighborhood. But I think they should look around and pay more attention to what it is that is there. We've got a lot of history. We've got a lot of heart.
But you heard Chris Wallen say the majority of people are perfectly happy with the project.
Well, Chris and I count majority a little bit differently apparently. And it depends a lot of how you actually ask the question. I agree with most of the things that Chris said. We need density. We need more development. We're not NIMBY, but there is a lot to be learned about the style and form and options that we have around development. We're still a young city. We're entering a very exciting time.
Well, and a very interesting discussion, both sides. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Bill.